Hey there, it's Carly. We're looking for feedback from Expat Focus Podcast listeners, and we'll give them an Amazon gift card for their time. If this sounds like you, drop us an email for more details at contact@expatfocus.com. If you're aiming to move abroad this year, a life coach may be exactly who you need to hear from. Bianca Tate joins me to explain why clarity, confidence, and courage are key to achieving your goals. It's the Expat Focus Podcast, the first podcast for 2025, and I couldn't think of a better guest to have this conversation with as we kick off the new year. Bianca Tate, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
You're a professional coach and you help your clients navigate major life decisions. One of those is, of course, the decision to move abroad, which you've had firsthand experience in. Can you tell me about your international journey?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Happy to. It's been a little bit all over the place. I'm currently based in Lisbon, Portugal, which is the fourth country that I'm living in. For context, I was born in Germany, moved to the United States at a very young age. So I feel like I've always had it in me to want to move abroad, explore, and come back to Europe. So halfway through my career, I made the decision that I really want to experience Germany as an adult, actually living there, actually working there, and not just visiting my grandparents. So I found an opportunity that brought me to Berlin, Germany, for 15 months for an international assignment to launch a major retailer in the United States. In that move, I thought I was well prepared, having some German roots to, move to Berlin, and I learned the hard way that culture shock is a real thing, even if you have German roots. So that was my first experience as an expat. Many lessons learned from that, but at the end of the day, it really woke up that desire for me and resonated with me that Germany and Europe really is home. So after 1 year back in the US with my international assignment coming to an end, I decided, no, Europe is home. And I made the transition to move back to Germany. Since that time, I've spent 3 years living in the Netherlands. I've had the opportunity to take a sabbatical for 15 months where I traveled the world. I spent several months in South America, South Africa, and traveling through Europe. And then coming back to reality, of course, I needed to pick a place to land. And I really wanted to stretch my comfort zone, expand my horizons. And Portugal has always been one of my favorite countries. So I decided to really try something new, and I sought out an opportunity and was able to move to Portugal.
Amazing. You really have been everywhere by the sounds of it.
Yes.
It's interesting you talk about going to Germany with some little bit of confidence because of your heritage
Mm.
and then having that kind of, I guess you would call it like a culture shock. My father's from Malta, and when we went to Malta for the first time, I had this blind faith that I could follow his lead, and he was even a little bit of a fish out of water in his home country because it had been so many years. Do you remember something specific about your move to Germany and feeling like you had it completely, understood and then realized you didn't?
Yes, I mean, I feel like Berlin, it was completely a different world anyways. And when I did live in Germany, I was growing up in small village outside of Frankfurt. So the Germany that I knew was not the Germany I arrived to in Berlin. So especially coming from Florida to Berlin, it was a night and day difference. To be fair, I also only had a few days notice from my employer because they looked at me and I spoke some German. They're like, well, your German's good enough. We need you to go in 3 days. Where some of my other colleagues had several months to prepare and language training. So I remember coming to Berlin and the dialect also being completely different. So regular terms that I knew for groceries and things like that were terms that I've never heard of. And also arriving there as a senior leadership, preparing to launch the company in the United States, everyone was looking at me with such high expectations, and I didn't know basic terms. So I think going to work and trying to meet the expectations was a big shock. The dialect, so the language barrier really surprised me. And I think throughout that 15-month journey, I fell into some of the more traditional pitfalls that many expats find themselves in once that honeymoon period and newness wears off.
And as a life coach, I suppose you would advise your clients to take more than a couple of days to prepare for a move abroad?
Yes, so I mean, I had already accepted the assignment and the position, so I knew it was coming. It was really maybe not the best way to handle it, also from an employer point of view of, how does 3 days notice sound when you think you have several months? But yeah, as a life coach, I mean, I think one of the key things is to be clear, like, why are you going? Know what's important for you so you can prepare to have all those things as you transition. And of course, have somewhat of an action plan for when you get there. And this being my first time expat experience, I just thought, okay, cool. I'm going to Germany. No big deal. I'm having support with logistics and housing and getting settled. I don't see what I need to really prepare for here. And it turns out there's a lot to prepare for when you make this transition.
So I'm curious about at which point in your journey you decided to help others with their moves abroad.
Well, I think my journey in becoming a coach has been going on for some time, and the clarity to help others move abroad just kind of came together. So I have a 14 years experience in the corporate world, leading teams, mentoring, coaching. So I think this innate desire to help others and guide others has always been there. Add that in that I've known for at least 6 years that I've wanted to work for myself. And logically speaking, consulting made sense. But I knew if I was going to go all in, it needed to align with my values, my passion. And having to navigate even facing burnout as an expat myself, I in the past have worked with a life coach myself. And getting some clarity around my values and goals and really what I want in working with this coach also inspired me at that time to seek a similar path. It was still a few years in the making, and certain circumstances just kind of point you in the right direction. But yeah, it all came together for me that coaching others is really where I found my ikigai. So, really, what I love, what I could get paid for, what people need. Now, add in my personal experience of having traveled the world, having been an expat 4 times over, knowing all the pitfalls firsthand, having experienced some of those things as being made redundant 6 months within a move, some of the worst case scenarios as an expat, navigating burnout as an expat, but also finding ways to thrive and recover from those things. It just really tied together for me with coaching that if I'm going to help people gain clarity, find confidence, be courageous, I mean, in what better area than when you're thinking of making one of the biggest moves of your life to another country?
And is there a very typical profile that you work with? I think you and I were probably in a similar position of being, professionals in our maybe mid-career when we decided to change countries. Do you work with a lot of people in a similar position, or is it a really broad spectrum?
Yes, I would say it's primarily mid-career professionals making that transition. I have also coached some early career professionals that are considering taking their first big assignment and maybe moving to another country for a better opportunity. I've coached seasoned expats who are considering maybe their 10th country and whether they should take this job offer in Spain or not. But I've also coached partners and spouses that have accompanied their partner to another country and are really trying to find themselves, find their identity, get their career going, build their own social life in this new environment.
Is choosing a life coach a little bit like choosing a psychologist? You kind of have to make sure both they and you are kind of the right fit for each other?
That was so well put because that's exactly what I tell people. Even when I have an introductory call, and that's why I have actually introductory calls with people, I always tell them it's so important that you energetically align, that your personality match with the person that you choose as a coach, because it's kind of like choosing a therapist. Um, Being coached requires some vulnerability. We may touch on things that require you to open up. You'll be doing some digging deep, and you want to make 100% sure that you're comfortable with whoever you're speaking to. Also, their approach. It's very important to ask how they work, what type of tools they incorporate. I personally try to adapt mine to my client's style, but I use a lot of somatic tools such as breath work or suggest meditation practice. Some of my clients get journaling prompts. So also with the work outside of the coaching session, you might want to make sure that's aligned with what you want. Do you want homework assignments or do you want just time to reflect between sessions? So looking at those things, I think are very important to ensure that you have a successful relationship and a productive relationship with your coach.
I'm one of those people that will ask for homework assignments and then not do them until 30 minutes before our next call.
But as you know, if you did it though, right, you get that sense of I did something towards this, right?
For you, Bianca, you had this familial connection to Germany. You had a work opportunity. You knew you'd always wanted to live in Europe. You had these reasons to go to this country. For people just figuring out their move abroad who may not be set on a country yet, what sort of factors should they be considering as they examine where should I move?
So there's quite a few, and it really depends on everybody's personal circumstances. I've created a worksheet for my clients that really don't have any idea yet. They just know they want to, which breaks it down into several different categories. So there's always the practical side, right? Where can I easily go with my visa? Especially if you don't have a job opportunity. There's, of course, the financial side, right? Looking at things like taxes, quality of healthcare. It's really, again, knowing why you want to move and then finding countries that align with that. Is it because you're tired of the winters in Canada and you want a nice warm climate year round? Do you want to grow and push your boundaries, learn a new language, learn Spanish? All of these factors should be considered when you're looking at a country. So it's very good to take a step back and one, again, think about your why. If it's career opportunity, then of course you might narrow down countries based on that. And then really looking at, okay, what factors are important? And then what I always recommend is that clients give each category a weight of how important is this for me? And then you can easily score and rank the countries to see how they score in each category that you determined is important. So I guess to recap, there's the practical side, right? Political environment, social benefits. A lot of clients focus on LGBTQ rights, things like that. Whereas others are just like, I want to live in sunshine year round. I don't care where I go. I can work remotely. So, and then once you have those factors, then ranking and rating the countries. And there's a lot of resources online and a lot of resources I share with my clients to really dig into that.
When I think about the factors that led me to London a decade ago, um, I had a European passport. This was, pre-Brexit, and it was English speaking. And I
Mhm.
felt like, oh, well, it's going to be the most similar country to Australia. I had very simplistic reasons for why I chose that country, the UK, not London, obviously. Um, and a decade later, if I made that same move, I think my parameters, my factors in choosing a country would be different to when they were, in my 20s.
Of course. And I mean, I think it's also everybody has their own degree of comfort. And that's actually one of the points on the questionnaire that I have to help people select the countries is cultural familiarity, English speaking, for example, the ease to get by. I'm doing okay in Lisbon, but a lot of things, even government wise, are very difficult to navigate if you do not speak Portuguese. And that can lead to a lot of frustrations and challenges. So, if
Mm.
it's your first move abroad, it makes sense to pick something that might be an easier transition. It's a stepping stone for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, sort of depends on, how much you like a challenge as well, and if you wanna scale that challenge up later, which is I feel like what you did.
Now that you've asked me the question, I was reflecting on this myself, and I'm like, would I have moved to Portugal right out of the gate? And I mean, I guess to be fair, given what my values and priorities were at that point, if the career opportunity would have been amazing, probably, but I think I would have had a lot more hesitation, for sure. So, yes, I also feel like I built up to Portugal.
We talked about the fact that ideally you spend more than a couple of days, preparing for a move abroad. I know for me, I think the thought that maybe I wanna relocate started from a Europe trip in, say, a September or October, and the following April, I decided to quit my job. So, it was maybe close to 6 months from the thought that I think this is what I want to do to actually taking action. Where do you tend to start with people in helping them in their decision-making process and figuring out their why?
It really depends on when people find me. I always recommend as you're starting to consider or you're feeling a little bit stuck, that's the best time to really start digging into your why and developing an action plan. And working with a coach is a great thing, but also talking to others who have done it, talking to your friends and family is always a good place to start. I will say though that half of my clients probably come to me when they're already in this journey and really feeling stuck and maybe wondering, did I make the right decision? Or these aspects of my life are lacking. What do I do? I'm unhappy with this choice that I made. And I think that's quite common for expats as well as the honeymoon phase wears off. And you're like, okay, I'm over the cute cobblestone streets and Pasha de Nada. Now I'm missing my friends. I'm missing home. You start having some frustrations, maybe with the local language or things not working the way you're used to. And that's when I see a lot of people self isolate or really think they made a mistake. So it's always recommended at the very beginning to really be clear and have a plan. And people find me at different stages when they're first considering it and they want some guidance on if it's the right decision for them. But also, once they've made the decision and they're wondering, what have I done? Is this okay? Am I supposed to be feeling like this? What do I do?
I still remember the day I handed in my resignation and thinking to myself, my resignation back in Australia, and thinking, "Oh gosh, what have I done?" It's such a big leap. Oh, for me, it was into the unknown. I was moving to the UK without a job, without too much of a plan.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then to hear people around me in the following weeks talk about, "Oh, well, we need to recruit for Carly's position." Um, I think there's that, self-defense mechanism that kind of kicks in, and it's like, maybe I should just stay. Maybe this isn't the right choice, and pushing through that takes a lot of courage.
It really does. The comfort zone is so powerful, and I see what I call comfortable unhappiness. I see so many people get stuck in that because, I mean, in a way, it is your brain telling you you're safe. You don't need to be happy to be safe and survive. You're just surviving. So, this is great. We don't need anything else. But a lot of us have this burning desire, this urge for there must be something more. But I mean, exactly what you said. It's the fear of the unknown, and it takes a lot of courage to step out of that. And not just courage, but also confidence in your abilities, in your own resilience, in your capability to problem solve. And that's actually one of the big pieces I take my clients through, whether they're moving abroad or thinking about changing careers. It's really digging into, okay, let's break it down. What is the worst possible outcome that could happen? I mean, you maybe lose your job within 6 months of moving to a new country. I know that feeling very well. It's scary. Um, Also, a lot of people think this decision is permanent, that if I move to Spain, that's it, that's my life, and there's no going back. And I think for most of us, there is a way to undo things, there is a way to go back. So, in working through these are the worst possible outcomes, and this is what I'm going to do if this happens, or this is what I can do to prevent this from happening, also reassures a lot of people that, okay, wait, I do have options. To the worst possible thing that can happen might be bad, but I will manage. I can survive this. I can pivot. And I think that's really important for regulating the nervous system and also finding that courage to say, okay, I'm going to jump.
I remember my mom saying to me at the time, "Just remember, if it doesn't work out, you can always come home. And, in 24 hours, you'll be back in Australia."
Yeah.
And that was super reassuring at points in London where things were tough.
Yeah, exactly. Having a network of people and also reminding yourself, okay, it's a plane ticket away, and this is also where
Mm.
having a plan comes in place of, will you feel better? Will you feel more secure to have a little safety net aside? Not spend all your money on the plane ticket to go there, but save a
Or the
little
or
bit
the
of money to
trips
have a
on the
plane ticket.
weekends, yeah.
Yeah, save a little bit to have money to go back home. And just to plan ahead on those things really does make the difference when the times get hard, because they will get hard. Moving abroad's not easy. I personally think it's definitely worth it. I've interviewed dozens of expats, digital nomads recently. Not one of them has ever regretted their decision, and they all will tell you it's worth it. Do it scared, do it anyways. I mean, the feedback was almost unanimous on what advice would you give somebody who is scared? And they're just like, do it scared. Have a plan,
Yeah.
have a fallback, but do it.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bianca, in your experience, when do the panicked phone calls start? When do your clients begin to face some challenges where they might be looking to you for some extra support? Is it before they get on that plane, or is it 6, 8, 12, 18 months into their their life abroad?
Um, I think it's twofold. I think the challenges are just different. So before, and you mentioned in your example, as soon as you gave that notice, it became real.
Yeah.
And that moment that you booked the ticket or you sign the lease contract or you sign that contract for a job, then it's real. And it's a mix between excitement, but also, okay, is this really the right thing? So I think there's a lot of nerves. And of course, at that time, there's a lot of stress, logistically speaking, right? You're closing an old chapter, maybe getting rid of things, putting things in storage, saying goodbye to loved ones, and you're starting a new chapter, potentially a new position, a new country. Everything is new. So I think at that point, it's really more about time management, prioritizing, having your goals clear and set, taking action. So I think that's a little bit of, I wouldn't say panic, but stress. But I think the panic really kicks in once that honeymoon period wears off in the new country. And that varies from individual to individual. My personal experience with that, having been an expat for companies, so moving abroad for a position, I would get so submerged in my new role and trying to make that work that the biggest pitfall I encountered was failing to take a holistic view and set goals for other areas of my life. So I was fine the first few months working away, performing in my new role, checking out the sites, getting to know neighborhoods. But then after a few months, when my only friends were work colleagues, which my discussion was limited to. Um, and that newness started wearing off, that reality started sinking in of, okay, there's certain things I don't like, certain things that I miss, certain frustrations with the language. And then add in that all of a sudden you realize you're alone. So the girl Sunday brunch with before, or that yoga studio you visited on a regular basis where you had a sense of community, all of that stuff is gone. And I think this is one of the important aspects in planning that people fail to neglect. They get so focused on logistics and the new job, maybe, that they're not taking a holistic view of what makes for a balanced life. And this contributes so much to the emotional and mental resilience to have that balance, that hobby that you used to have before, that community you can talk to, relate to, go out for drinks with, have brunch with. All of those things are so easily overlooked when you're planning a move abroad, but after a few months, they really start wearing on you when you don't have them. And I think that's when most people call me as well, is when they're like, "Well, I'm all alone, I don't know what's wrong, I'm not happy," and they're just missing these pieces for their life that they didn't proactively plan for.
What did you do to fix the situation in your own life?
Yeah. So, what's coming to mind right off the bat is my first time in Berlin because I clung to my work colleagues. And then my whole life there was just work. And the people I was hanging out with after work were also from work. And I did have to kind of pull myself up off the ground because I did hit that point where I was just binge watching Netflix every night. I didn't want to go out. I felt kind of lost. I felt alone. I felt unmotivated. And I didn't incorporate my hobbies at that time. I didn't have friends outside of work. So I really almost hit rock bottom and I realized it. And I really had to pull myself up and force myself. So I sought out different communities through Meetup and different applications, right, to reach out to people. I signed up for gym memberships or like class pass type of things where I could join local yoga studios and start sampling things. But it worked out in the end. I was able to start building that, but I had a rough road before I started heading there. And that's what I would love for people to, think about when they move, to just prevent that low point of where you're just not in a very good place because you forgot all those aspects that make you whole.
Mhm. It's been this is my 11th year abroad, and every so often something hits me that makes me realize, like, oh, I'm feeling a bit lonely, or I feel like I don't have many friends, or I'm really missing this from my life. And I think the biggest thing I realized is that you really need to work possibly harder than if you were at home to find community and maintain community. The city that I'm in, people tend to come and go. So,
Mhm.
especially here, it's like a friendship turnover sort of happens. And it gives you even more reason to really try to make friends with locals and not just be in a fellow foreigner community because they're not the ones that necessarily stay around, you know?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. As an expat, you're still somewhat of an outsider, and I mean, I'm still guilty of this. But I'm working on my Portuguese. But I think trying to learn the language is really important as well. Meeting local people, making friends with the locals is really important, and there's to get engaged with the community. One of the hobbies that's completely a new hobby for me, and I'm all about facing my fears is rock climbing and bouldering.
Awesome.
Yes, and also terrifying.
Yeah.
I would
Gotta
love to
say,
like
I
post.
low key might have a fear of heights, so,
I totally have a fear of heights, and I would totally post cool, epic videos of me crying or climbing, but I'm probably crying while I'm doing it.
Cry climbing, that's a new
Yeah,
thing.
cry climbing. It's totally trending. But to be fair, I'm going to a gym with a lot of Portuguese people, and I'm really found a hobby where I'm also meeting local people and I'm kind of being adopted, and they're trying to teach me Portuguese, and I'm invited on the weekends to go out and explore. So some people might find that through volunteering or uh, speaking to people at the local shops and stores. I think, all these little things definitely help. Having some local friends also helps with those feelings of loneliness because, like you said, whether it's a very transient city or, you're just an expat and all your expat friends leave for the holidays. Yeah. Community, I think, is really a lifesaver when you're on this journey.
I also love that you can make friends in the most random of places. Years ago, I did a hula hooping workshop at like a burlesque studio one Saturday
Mm.
afternoon and got speaking to a girl on the tram who was going to the same place. And we're still friends to this day. And it was only because we turned up to that same workshop one Saturday, you know?
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage though, especially when you're new somewhere. And like I said, I spoke some German when I moved to Germany, but even the first times I was going to a yoga studio, I'm like, well, what if I don't understand everything? Or what if I say something and sound stupid? And a lot of
God,
limit.
you're a German speaker and you're worried about that. You should have seen me in my first French yoga class. My gosh.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the French might be a little tougher when it comes to the language than the
But
German,
did you at
but
least get the key words so you were like downward dog at the right time? Or
yes, and it was really what another thing that comes up in coaching quite often and that we work on, which is kind of the confidence piece, which I struggled with, is the limiting beliefs, right? Everybody has them. They vary from person to
guilty, very
person.
guilty.
But, for me, one of the beliefs I had is that my German needed to be perfect. Leaving Germany early on, but going back every now and then to visit, people forgot that I grew up in the United States, but they looked at me as German. So when I made mistakes in my German, I was maybe a little bit criticized or made fun of, like, oh, she said something stupid. And for me, that stuck with me. So I had this very high expectation, like my German has to be perfect, or people are going to make fun of me, and all of these things. And it's just something I had to get over and work through and say, just reassure myself and try to improve. But I think this is also a big thing that comes up in coaching is there's might be different reasons why people feel intimidated to go out, build out the community, and to address those fears and what's coming up for those people and set action plans and goals around that is really what coaching is about as well, because it's not that easy to just go to the hula hoop burlesque workshop or to go to the yoga class or to be on the side of a rock wall climbing in order to
Yeah.
make friends. So really working through what's holding you back from stepping out and being a little bit uncomfortable is also important.
One of our previous guests actually had a similar experience to you. He took his family to live in Taiwan. Ethnically, he's from Taiwan, but he grew up in the States. And so he
Mm.
said it was even more difficult because the locals would treat him as a local and then realize, his language wasn't as up to scratch as a local person. And so it was almost like being an invisible expat in that way.
I felt the term imposter expat came up for me when I was
That's a good
reflecting on
one.
this. I'm like,
Mm.
I'm an imposter expat. But the retailer I launched in the United States, the German retailer, in order to learn everything, the operations, we even had to work as store associates. And when you're young, you don't learn the names of, say, all the spices, and mind you, I'm in a different part of Germany. And I would have adults ask me for things where they are in the store. And I would have to tell them, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. And when you say that
The
in
German
German,
word. Yeah.
yeah, and you tell somebody, like, you don't know what sage is or whatever the case is, and they just look at you like,
Like, "Are you
huh.
stupid?"
They're like, is there somebody else I could speak to? And I'm like, absolutely, yes. Let me go get that person for you and crawl in a hole and never come back out.
But if you
So,
need to know the English word, I'm your person.
exactly. So, yeah, it does require a certain degree of being able to be humble. in order to jump on this. But I mean, like I said, no regrets. A lot of lessons learned that I love to share with others and guide them through and prepare them to avoid some of these pitfalls. But there will always be pitfalls to a certain extent. It's not easy, but I've never had one person tell me that it wasn't worth it.
Bianca, it's a new year. We're recording this around the middle of January, where most people are still motivated for their New Year resolutions. Me, I'm still macro counting. I have not yet given up. Wish me luck for week 2. But for anybody who might have a move abroad on their 2025 resolutions list, where do you suggest they start?
Well, I suggest that they start with just being 100% clear on why they want to move. That could be because you're leaving something that you do not like. It could be you're doing it for career opportunities, for more safety and security, for adventure, personal growth. But whatever your reason for why is, be clear on it because the journey will be difficult, and knowing your why is a solid foundation and a great place to come back to when some challenges arise. The only other piece of advice I would give them, especially as they're making these considerations or are in the planning phase, is take a holistic view of what's important to you. Don't just look at the career that you might be moving for or the climate that you might be moving for. Take a look at all the different areas of your life, your social life, your relationships, your finances, your home environment, and determine what's important for you in each one of those areas. And as you start making those plans, look for places that can give you what's aligned with your values or make a plan to have that in place for when you do land. And I feel like that is basically the North Star to any journey abroad is being clear on those things and planning around them.
Bianca, thank you so much for coming on the Expat Focus podcast today to talk about moving abroad in 2025 and how to make that happen in your life. If people are interested in your coaching services, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Anybody that's interested in coaching or learning more can find me on my website at biancatate.com. There, they can book a free 30-minute introductory call. I also have a worksheet for decision making that they can download that walks them through some of the worst possible outcomes and how to prepare for them. And you're more than welcome to also connect with me on LinkedIn under my name, Bianca Tate.
That's it for today. You'll find plenty of move abroad inspiration in our podcast archives and on our website at expatfocus.com. While you're there, don't forget to sign up to our monthly newsletter. Just head to expatfocus.com/newsletter. And we love to hear what you think of the show. So rate and review us wherever you like to listen. I'll catch you next time.